That is a fact. Nobody cares.
I hear her music on the radio. I don't think I've ever seen her before, though.
Awfully cute.
What is happening, everybody? It is time for another MLB Live Before Lock. It is the second baseball slate of the day. There was the early slate, which featured Paul Skeens lighting the world on fire. And I was watching some of that game, and I kind of was already leaning this way. I think Paul Skeens is the best pitcher in baseball, which I don't even think that's all. I thought maybe that would be somewhat of a hot take because I was kind of curious when I put out a poll earlier. I don't know if you saw this, Eric, but I put out a poll, asked people if Paul Skeens is the best pitcher in baseball, yes or no, and if not, who is? What percentage of people do you think agreed that Paul Skeens is the best pitcher in baseball?
Well, when I voted, it was 86%. That was the number that it was sitting at when I clicked the yes button. I saw your tweet.
Yeah, so 75% of people saying Paul Skeens is the best pitcher in baseball. So not a hot take at all. That seems to be what people are thinking, is that Paul Skeens, the best pitcher we have in baseball. And yeah, he has been ridiculously good. My brother actually just got, because I've told you, my brother's really into the baseball cards. Actually, you know that too, because you were over my house and you were talking to my brother about cards. My brother recently pulled a Paul Skeens 1-of-1 autograph card, which is worth like $1 gazillion now. So he's really excited about that.
Oh my God. Yeah, I would be okay with that. Paul Skeens, I would be looking at selling these cards based on what we've seen from pitchers in the NL here this year. But, you know, because Spencer Strider, it feels like so long ago, but in his rookie year, he came out of the gates just absolutely firing right away. Maybe not to this extent. I don't think anybody's really fired to this extent at 22 with this kind of hype and then lived up to it. But at the same time, arms are very much not built to do what they're doing right now. And that's what I'm always worried about with guys like Skeens.
Yeah, the only comp that I could think of in my lifetime is Steven Strasburg. I mean, just in terms of like pitching prospect with the hype and that first start that Strasburg had, which was it against the Pirates? I think it might have been against the Pirates.
I think it was.
He had like 13 strikeouts and looked absolutely untouchable. And then, you know, people forget because the end of Strasburg's career went so poorly, but he was ridiculously good for his first few years. But yeah, to your point, you just never know with arms and pitcher injuries. So I think my brother's listing the card for sale for like $10,000 or $12,000 or something like that. And if he gets somebody who's willing to bite on it, then off it goes. But or else he's very excited. I think it's like the coolest card he's gotten so far.
That's amazing. Yeah, I saw. I mean, I've tracked some of like the bigger cards. I always find it to be fascinating. I follow a couple accounts on like Instagram and Twitter and stuff where I'm just always fascinated to see what stuff goes for. There's still a ceiling on 10 or 12 for that card. I would think that there's probably going to be more interested buyers right now. I mean, that is just a phenomenal pull.
So it's funny because of that. And I don't know how many people give a shit about this, but it's funny the way the card market works, which I don't know that much about, but I just know from my brother. My brother's like, each start he has that goes really well, his value goes up. But then if he has one start where it's like 6 innings, 4 runs, people are like, oh no, bust. And they like totally abort because people are just so reactionary when it comes to those kinds of things. But we got today's slate to talk about. And first off, anything you're seeing that's concerning from the weather front? Because it looks like it should be good.
100% perfect. Probably our best weather day of the last couple weeks.
Which is good to see because there's been a lot of sketchy weather spots. It doesn't look like it's going to be the case today. Still super hot weather, particularly in my office where it's really hot right now, but also in other places around the country. A lot of hot weather. It's led to more offense. So early in the year where people are like, what's going on? Are the balls being rigged in some kind of way where they're not jumping at all? We've seen a lot of high scoring games as the weather is heated up. So that seems to no longer be any kind of concern. Let's start talking about the pitchers here. We have let's group just the two 9K pitchers together. They're both fairly popular. Tanner Houck, great matchup against the Oakland A's. He is 30% owned. He is the chalkiest pitcher on the slate. It is kind of cool from a pitching sense because we have a lot of viable pitchers today, and it's a small slate, and it's really spread out ownership. We have, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pitchers that are 23 to 30% owned. So no like massive chalk, but a handful of popular pitchers to choose from. Tanner Houck, the overall most popular, 30% owned at home against the Oakland A's. And then you got Luis Castillo at $9,200, 25% owned against the Los Angeles Angels. Between these two pitchers, Eric, who is your favorite to pay up for?
It's weird because Tanner Houck is somebody that, I mean, I think he's really, really good. And I think the strikeout stuff is ridiculous. We just saw Brian Bayo and Nick Pivetta combined for a bazillion strikeouts the last 2 days. But this is also getting closer to the All-Star break, and they didn't have to utilize any of like their main bullpen arms yesterday. Let me double check this actually, because otherwise I'm talking out my ass. But I that's what I noticed watching the game, at least yesterday, is that they didn't end up in a position to really utilize their main guys. I just get worried that in good hitting weather, which we've just had eternally over here, I think you could see him run into a spot where it then gets a little concerning. You end up having it be a little bit thin, like 85 and 12 to 15 blowing out yet again this week. Or sorry, yet again here on Thursday. I just get worried that there might be like a short hook situation. But from an ownership perspective, I mean, I'm much more inclined to play Tanner Houck at 30% than Luis Castillo at 25. I have both in a number of lineups, but Tanner Houck currently in 44% of my lineups, Luis Castillo in 20. So I'm more inclined to play the Tanner Houck side. I'm assuming that this is the part where you tell me you just have a bunch of both.
Not exactly. I'm really flat at pitcher. I have a couple of spots I have some overweight stands on, but I've got Tanner Houck in 33% of lineups and Castillo in 27%. So I'm really, really aligned with the field. And that is what a lot of my pitcher exposure does look like, other than a couple of spots where, like I said, I'm taking some stances on. But it's not on Tanner Houck or Luis Castillo. I think these are two pitchers who are more or less fairly owned. For cash games, I definitely think you want to have Tanner Houck. And I think it's fine to have Luis Castillo. I think he's a good cash play, but I think Tanner Houck is like a must-have in cash games.
Correct. He's throwing that splitter. If that thing's on, it's going to be a lot of fun against this absolute strikeout haven that is the Oakland Athletics. Can they also inflict some pain? Sure. But the barrel percentage a lot lower for Tanner Houck than what it is for a Bayo or for a Nick Pivetta. And again, I think the strikeout stuff is going to be pretty comparable to 24-25% going forward. I think he's a really, really good major league pitcher. I like him a little bit more than I like Castillo at this phase of his career.
Yeah, so Tanner Houck, for me, I have a little bit more of. Don't have an issue with Luis Castillo, but I think the cash game option here, it should be Tanner Houck at home against the Oakland A's. Lots of strikeout upside, as you had alluded to. 8K range. We've got a handful of pitchers who are also popular in this range. Justin Steele is 23% owned on the road against the Baltimore Orioles at 8K. Justin Steele's been insanely good. Also feels like he pitches every 3 days. Seems like he's the only pitcher on the Chicago Cubs. We've got him at 8,000 on the road against the Baltimore Orioles. We've got Nestor Cortes, 8,300 on the road against the Tampa Bay Rays. He is 24.5% owned. Aaron Nola at $8,600 home against the Los Angeles Dodgers, 25% owned. And then finally, Max Fried, 13% owned at $8,800 on the road against the Arizona Diamondbacks. So of all of the pitchers on the slate that are priced above $7,500, the only one less than 23% ownership, it's Max Fried. Do you like him as a contrarian option here, Eric? Or is there a different 8K pitcher who you're prioritizing? Did I freeze? Did Eric freeze? Is anybody here? Am I gone? Okay, I wasn't sure if it was me or Eric. I could clearly tell one of us was frozen, but you can't tell because whenever it freezes on Zoom, it's like you could still move, but you can't necessarily see the other person. But yeah, Eric is just totally frozen here. So, and now his screen looks like my screen and my head has gotten lower. I look like Jordan on screen right now. We see Jordan and his head. You just only see it from here up. But all right, Eric is no longer with us. Rest in peace, Eric. So if Eric comes back, he'll give you his analysis on this price range. But in the interim, it's going to be on me to provide the analysis here as well. So the guy that I have the most exposure to here, guys, it is Nestor Cortes. So Cortes, of all these pitchers here, is the one that I think has the easiest matchup. So you look at Justin Steele on the road, Baltimore Orioles, clearly a tough matchup. Aaron Nola pitching against the Los Angeles Dodgers, also pretty clearly a tough matchup. And then you got Max Fried on the road against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Not necessarily the most difficult matchup. Him and Cortes do the easiest matchups of the two in this price range. But there's a lot more strikeout upside in that Tampa Bay Rays lineup. And then also you're getting a little bit cheaper of a price tag on Nestor Cortez. Those $500 salary savings I do find to be helpful here. You'll also see Jordan has run Sims just using the default settings here in our contest generator and Sims. And also we got the Nestor Cortez, the second most of any pitcher on the slate. But it also does kind of show how flat pitching is here, because you got Cortez in 27% of lineups. And are you scrolled all the way to the top, by the way, Jordan? I think you are, correct? Yeah. Yeah. So you see then Aaron Nola, 28% owned, is the most rostered pitcher that we got to in the default settings here on the Sims as the most rostered pitcher on the entire slate. For a small slate, you just don't typically see it being that spread out. So for me, the guy that I'm going to be looking at the most is Nestor Cortez. He is my most rostered pitcher overall on the slate. But since, like I said before, I'm pretty spread out, it means I have 34% of Nestor Cortez. So he's like the biggest stand I have of the most popular pitchers, but it's not like I'm going crazy overweight in any kind of way. Let's see. We've got some super chats here. Let's see what we got. We've got Chris Williams gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. Malukar gifted 1 out. And then Chris Williams also said that he thinks it's a YouTube issue. He gifted out memberships, but it didn't gift them. Let's see. Is that the case? Yeah, same thing happened there. Yeah. So Malukar gifted out the membership. Chris did as well. And YouTube didn't do anything with it. So nothing we could do about it. That sucks. Thank you for supporting the channel, Chris, and Malukar as well. But yeah, not sure why that isn't working. Is there anything we could do in the background to activate those, Jordan, or is that just a no? All right. Yeah, because if there's 6 people in chat that we could just manually give the memberships to, I think that would be a good way to go about doing this. But other than that, not really a whole lot we could do on our end. If there's any questions you guys have in the Discord channel, hit me up. We can answer those as we go as well. As far as Max Fried goes, he is the one contrarian pay-up option we have on the slate. I'm not getting to a ton of him, though. 9%, so a little bit underweight to the field on Max Fried. He's had a very odd season, because he started the year pitching very poorly, and then he looked like one of the best pitchers in baseball. And then some of his starts as of late have also been kind of suboptimal. Max Fried, his last time out, for instance, 6 innings, gives up 11 hits, 5 earned run against the Philadelphia Phillies. The biggest issue I have with Fried compared to some of these other pitchers, it's just a lack of strikeout upside. If you look at Max Fried, his last handful of starts, 4 strikeouts, 4 strikeouts, 4 strikeouts, 6 strikeouts, 3 strikeouts. He had that 1 out against the Boston Red Sox where he went nuclear and struck out 13. Max Fried is a great real-life pitcher, but doesn't quite bring us the same fantasy upside. He just doesn't have enough strikeout rate for me to really want to be getting to him all that much as a contrarian option. Eric's back. What's up, Eric?
Hello. I have no idea what happened. Apparently the internet flickered or something happened, and then I thought I was talking to myself, or I got kicked, or what happened?
I had that moment where I was talking, and because it's not like people in the chat, they can't really respond to me. And also we have that lag that Jordan mentioned before, and Jordan wasn't saying anything either. So I'm just sitting there, I'm like, okay, either myself or Eric has gone right now. One of our internet cut out, and I don't know. So I'm just going to keep talking and we'll see what happens. Ended up being it was on a year end, not my end, but I'll tell you what we just walked through. Went through the pitchers in the 8K range, Eric. The one I have the most of is Nestor Cortez. And I found it difficult to get to Max Fried, even though he's lower owned, just because of the lack of strikeout upside. 8K range, do you have a priority pitcher?
All my stuff back up, all my tabs went out, and everything just disappeared here. So yeah, give me 1 second just to,
sure,
because otherwise I'm not going to be able to talk intelligently.
Walking through the pitchers here, mentioned before, I'm not getting to very much of Max Fried. My highest priority pitcher is Nestor Cortez, Eric. He's also my most rostered pitcher on the entire slate. I have him in 34% of lineups. My pitcher ownership, relatively flat. And then as far as the other pitchers in this price range, I'm right around even with the field on Aaron Nola and Justin Steele. So overweight to Nestor Cortez, not getting to Max Fried. If you guys are building a handful of lineups like 3, 4, 5, I wouldn't have Max Fried in any of those lineups.
Wow.
We also got a question from Hey, I'm Drew in the Discord channel, and he's saying, good afternoon, man. Congrats on your big PGA win. Thank you. Hey, I'm Drew. I appreciate it. Then he said he wanted to ask us for DK cash game plays for both pitchers and hitters. And then he thanks us in advance. So yeah, at pitcher on the high end, I'm going to say Tanner Houck for sure. You could go so many directions with your second starter. If you could fit him, Luis Castillo. If you can't fit Luis Castillo, I'm going to say Nestor Cortez. And then as far as your stacks go, I think you want to be playing hitters from the Boston Red Sox and the Houston Astros. Astros are going up against Roderick Munoz. Eric and I are going to say very negative things about him shortly. I didn't talk about Eric about this ahead of time. I just know what his opinions are on Roderick Munoz because we talk about the same thing every time Roderick Munoz pitches. And then Luis Medina, he is somebody who also is quite terrible, and he's going to be pitching against the Boston Red Sox today. So Boston Red Sox at home against Luis Medina, Houston Astros at home against Roderick Munoz. Those are the batters you want to be targeting for cash games. Do you have your stuff all situated?
I do. I just pulled it back up here. 8K range. I knew we were going to be different on this. I'm under on Nestor Cortez, so there is that. He's been good. He's been a lot better than the Carlos Rodon version. Bulls Southpaws doing things differently there, but I just like Justin Steele so much, and I know it's a terrifying spot. I know that Baltimore, they bring the power, but Justin Steele is at flat 8K. I feel like there's just a little bit more. I just feel like there's more opportunity for like a pitcher that I just think is better. And I do think that there might end up being some people who think about it the same way that I do, where it's like, oh shit, I can't play that much Justin Steele going up against Baltimore. And you know, we've talked a little bit about where there can be that artificial ownership bump or regression. Like I could see him coming in sub 20% very, very easily. I couldn't really see it with Nestor Cortez. And I know that it bears out, it's like what, 1.5% difference in their top 2 percentage, but I currently have 10% more Justin Steele at 24% than I do of Nestor Cortez at 14.
Anything else that's standing out to you in the 8K range? I mentioned I'm about even with the field on Aaron Nola. Are you getting to Max Fried? Do you have a different of opinion of Max Fried than I do?
It's hard to see a ton of strikeouts against Arizona there. It makes it tough to really want to go crazy there by any means. I think Aaron Nola's in the better strikeouts matchup, but I'm playing some Dodgers. It's yet again, I mean, we're running into this really nice weather, and it just continues to keep happening where, you know, we're seeing wind blowing out, we're seeing the humidity start to ramp up, we're seeing runs being put up, and it's 90 in Philly with what, 10-mile-per-hour wind going out center to right. You get a number of these big boppers back in for the Phillies, so the win chance goes up there, and LA's just doing this garbage bullpen stuff here for the most part. I think we're going to be running into a spot where the Dodgers end up being kind of more of the team that I want to get to for single entry potentially. Yeah, they're probably going to end up being my single entry team, but I just don't want to be getting to like 30% Aaron Nola by any means. I don't know what I'm going to get here in my next run. He was in 21% my first time around.
It's such a scary matchup against the Dodgers. Yep. I know he is priced down a little bit at $8,600, which is why he lands in really any of my lineups. If he was, you know, his normal price tag, wouldn't be playing him. I just think the field is pretty spot on with a lot of these pitcher exposures. I'm right around even with the field on Nola. Let's talk about punt options. There's a lot of good high-end pitchers. As a result, people aren't really going to the low end. There's only 2 pitchers sub 8K pulling any ownership. That is Brandon Pfaadt. He is 24% owned. And then we got Shane Baz. He is 11% owned. And then everybody else is 5% owned or less. Let's start by talking about Pfaadt. Are you going to be getting to him overweight to the field, at the field, or under at 24%?
I'm going to be under because I just love getting to Shane Baz today.
It is going to be an under for myself as well. I've got just under 20% of him. So it's not like he's a terrible option or anything like that. I think if we're just talking solely about which pitcher we expect to score the most fantasy points, sub 8K, I think the answer is Brandon Pfaadt. Just the ownership, I'm going to be a little bit underneath that mark. But tell me what it is that you're liking about Shane Baz, who is formerly one of the top pitching prospects in baseball. He's had some issues with injuries and some inconsistent pitching here and there. He's got a matchup against the Yankees team, which top of the lineup, scary. Back of the lineup, not all that scary these days. But what are you going to be doing with him in tournaments?
I'm going to be playing a lot of him. He got to 92 pitches. I didn't expect 92 pitches for him right out the get-go there. 6 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts. The 4-seamer, hi, hello, how are you this fine day? It was right back to where you would want it to be here to start accumulating some strikeouts. And yeah, if you want to look at 2021, 2022, and just say, oh, his velocity is up or it's down or anything, it looked really good to me there. It's just one start up against the Texas Rangers, but the main thing you had to see that you liked, 92 pitches. He threw primarily 4-seamer, 48 of those pitches. He hit 99 on the gun for a couple of those fastballs. I mean, he could get there when he wanted to. I know that they probably don't want him doing that a ton right out the gate, but the velocity was like ridiculous compared to where I thought it might be for his first start back. So when I basically put a note saying Shane Baz play tons of him next time around because he's still not going to be popular. And sure enough, 11.3% ownership. It's the Yankees. This is freaky. There are not a lot of teams that you want to be like targeting the pitcher against the best team in baseball against right-handed pitching, a 119 WRC plus. But I still like the talent of Shane Baz so much that if you give me him at 10% on a smaller-ish slate, like a 7-game slate, there's no way that I'm not going to be overweight to it. So, I mean, if you want to just flip-flop the ownership on Fat, I have no problem with it. I have 18% Brandon Fat right now, but I have 31% Shane Baz. So he is my second highest owned pitcher.
Yeah, it's a pretty big stand there. I'd say the thing that surprised me the most about his first start of the season, 92 pitches.
Yep.
I thought for sure, considering his injury history, first start of the season at the big leagues, that he'd be a little bit more limited. I think we should expect that if he's going well, no restrictions at all today. Fair to say?
Yeah, I think he could get up to 95 to 100. No problem whatsoever, which is basically, yeah, no restrictions by any means. But yeah, the 92 pitches was just awesome to see. And this is a 7-game slate with, I would say, some pretty pronounced chalk. I mean, we've got some high upside arms. I think Tanner Houck can be one. I think Aaron Nola, even against the Dodgers, is going to at least find some strikeouts. Can he avoid the other stuff? We'll see. And I don't really find anything else to be as appealing from a strikeout perspective as what Shane Baz is. So for me, that's just a click.
Getting to any of these contrarian pitchers for cheap, because we've got a who's who of names that are hard to pronounce, guys we've never heard of, and things of the like on the low end here.
Jack Cock Anowich.
Is that how you pronounce his name? I was recording my shorts earlier today, and I've never seen this fella's name in my entire life before. So I'm just kind of going off. I'm just reading off my exposures, and I'm going through. I'm like, I'm not taking the extra time to try to figure out how to pronounce his last name. It's like, I'm just going to do my best with what's in front of me right here. And I was just like, Cockanowitz. And then we moved on to the next thing. Is he somebody you're getting any exposure to?
He's 4K. He's terrible. He's only pitched in Double-A. You go through some of his numbers. I went through them last night, and he is really unimpressive to me. I think he's a 4K pitcher, though, who is stretched out. He's 23. Again, he's had a really good, last 34 innings or something, but I'm just not a believer that he's going to find any kind of prominent success at the big league level, but it's Seattle. Seattle strikes out a ton against any right-handed human being. So for me, a flat 4K for him, I'm okay getting to some, but there's a reason he's only 11% owned, because people are looking at what we're looking at and that he's not very good.
Yeah, I am overweight to the field on him. I mean, he's so low owned. He's cheap, low owned. Matchup against the Mariners isn't bad either. So if you absolutely need to save the salary, I do think that he's a reasonable punt. It seems like he's another one of these guys, though, that's up at least he's had success in the minor leagues. But I mean, we've seen so many guys this year. They get called up to the big leagues for like no reason at all. I wouldn't put him quite on that kind of level or anything like that, because at least he's young. He's had some amount of success in the minor leagues, but still not great. I mean, he's got a 4.55 ERA and a 3.67 FIP in the minor leagues. Did mention some of his recent starts have been better. I do think the most likely scenario here is he just gets hit very hard.
He's just going to get hit pretty darn hard. But you get any 4K pitcher with the pulse and you're running into the best strikeout matchup you could possibly have. That's pretty cool. I'm curious, I want to know what some of this ownership is on Albert Suarez, because like people want to play Albert Suarez against the Cubs. They're like 4.7% ownership for him. I feel like should be a little bit higher. We've got positive leverage coming in on him, but I guess for me, I'm just so concentrated on Shane Baz, because like if you told me somebody sub 8K wins you a tournament, I would think that it's probably him and Fat every single time, and one's getting double the ownership of the other.
Yeah, we got Chris Raptor in the chat saying that Paul Skeens will be a future ace next season. No, he might be the best. In my opinion, he's the best pitcher in all of baseball today, this minute. He's as ace gets.
I could not believe how good he looked today. It was wild. And let me just put on my dunce cap for a second, because I did look at 7.5 there in Milwaukee, and the things that I look at and the way that I go about it, I was like, oh, Paul Skeens, there's still going to be some difficulties in that lineup. But then I saw Reese Hoskins wasn't in it, and I was on the over of 7.5, and I feel like a fish.
Let's move. Anything else you want to add about the DraftKings
Nope.
pitchers? And I'll look at FanDuel.
Not at all. No. Tanner Houck, awesome spot there, but also want to get some athletics. Aaron Nola, strikeouts available there, but I'm going to be getting to the Dodgers, so we'll get to those in stacks.
All right, let's talk about the FanDuel side of pitching, where all the same pitchers we talked about on FanDuel, on DraftKings as well, although our buddy Kokonowitz, he is not going to be on FanDuel. He is not in the player pool over there. Nothing to worry about. Although with that said, I don't think I'd want to be rostering that his presumed $5,500 price tag. Anyway, who is your favorite pitcher on FanDuel? We've got a ton of guys who are 10 to 20% owned. Actually, I should say a ton of guys that are 8 to 20% owned, because Brandon Pfaadt, Nestor Cortez, Justin Steele, Max Fried, Luis Castillo, Aaron Nola, Tanner Houck, all of them are 8 to 20% owned. The most popular, which is Luis Castillo at 20% owned, only $9,300 for him against the Los Angeles Angels. So I do think on FanDuel, with Luis Castillo being $900 less expensive than Tanner Houck, that's your cash game pitcher over on FanDuel. I do think you want to be going with Luis Castillo. For GPPs, though, are you looking at Shane Baz for cheap, since you like him a lot on DraftKings, or is there a different direction you like to go for a GPP pitcher on FanDuel?
I'm currently trying to log into FanDuel and see what contests are available, because I'm going to play a lot of Shane Baz if there are contests available right now. Of course, I have to do the Preston Hold thing. I have to, get give them my social, whatever else I have to do to try to log in right now. But yeah, I'm going to play some Shane Baz over there. There's no way at 6% that I'm not going to enjoy that at 8K. You're probably, Luis Castillo is still a really, really good option. 9,300. You're getting quite a decrease off of Tanner Houck there, and a lower implied run total, a better game environment as far as like it's not 90 with the wind blowing out. It's just, like the regular 75, 80 there that you're going to get in Anaheim throughout that game. So it's not nuclear weather by any means. So definitely Luis Castillo, probably good chalk for FanDuel purposes at that price tag. But give me some Shane Baz in my life.
If you're rostering somebody who is contrarian on FanDuel, I think he's pretty clearly the guy to go to. All things considered, though, my favorite pitcher to roster on FanDuel is going to be Tanner Houck. You're getting a little bit of an ownership discount on him relative to DraftKings. He's 10,200, so expensive, but not like prohibitively so. So 13.9% ownership for Tanner Houck. He's overall my favorite guy to get to on FanDuel. Luis Castillo, the cash game play, and then Shane Baz, you're looking to be contrarian. Anything else to add?
Love that you're on board with me. Thank you.
All right. See, we got a question here in Discord. We've got a question from Gido213. He wants to know if he could use the promo code. So the Greg promo code, which we've got. Today's the final day of the promo code celebrating my GPP win from over the weekend, which is going to get you 25% off any package on the site if you sign up. Gido wants to use it for NFL. There are no NFL packages available as of right now. There are a couple of reasons for it, but most notably because football doesn't start for a few months. So you could use it for any ongoing sport, but if you sign up for a football package now, it would cover you for a month and you wouldn't get any access to anything because there is no football in the next month. So not good for football, Gido, but we are going to be running, I guarantee you, we haven't planned it yet, but I do know just for a fact, the way that we do stuff at the start of the season, there will be some sort of sale at the start of football season. So I'll wait for that one for now. But if there is anything you want to sign up for now, or if anyone wants to sign up for any packages, you can use the promo code Greg to get yourself 25% off. And that includes the lineup generator package, which we will build some lineups in right now. If you wouldn't mind pulling that up, Jordan. Let's go DraftKings. Let's build contrarian lineups. I'm really interested to see on a smaller slate what we get building contrarian lineups today. I don't think it's overall going to make a massive difference versus bounce because there isn't any kind of real pronounced chalk on the slate, but still interested to see what kind of a mix of players we get building contrarian lineups.
I'm with you.
There is one stack I really, really like today.
Me too. I've got one that I'm very nervous about my life.
Oh boy. Red Sox.
Yep.
Devers, Houck, Dominic
really
Smith, Yoshida, Duran, David Hernandez. There's Jose Altuve, Connor Wong. So including Tanner Houck. What is that? Like 7 of our 8 most rostered players are coming from the Boston Red Sox. They're going to be popular. They're overall the most popular offense on the slate, project for 13% ownership. And in our top stacks tool, we put a 16% chance to be the top scoring team against Luis Medina. So our data really does like Boston. Once again, it's been jamming Red Sox in this series against the Oakland A's. For yourself, Eric, we'll first start by talking about large field GPPs. Then we'll talk about single entry. I do feel like yesterday I felt annoyed because the Mets were not projected for a lot of ownership. Then the slate locks, they end up being crazy popular. So then you check the post contest sims. It's like the Mets were massively negatively leveraged because of how popular they ended up being.
Yep.
Should have known that it was impossible to get a contrarian team against Patrick Corbin, but that was what ended up happening yesterday. Who is the team you're getting the most exposure to in large field GPPs today?
It is the Red Sox at the moment. Funky Cole Medina. He is not very good at the pitching of the baseballs. And so for me, it kind of like began with that. I mean, we're seeing Red Sox, the combination of power and then speed that you get at the top of this lineup with Duran and with Hamilton, it just makes it so easy to see such a pronounced upside in a lot of like quote unquote game scripts. Like there's just so many ways that they can accumulate fantasy points. And then Fenway, from a park factor perspective, even before we got the crazy heat in there, you go to StatCast park factors and you just look at everything under all conditions. Fenway is number 2 in baseball behind the Colorado Rockies, behind Coors Field. Fenway is out of control over a 3-year sample size. You go to no and you change it to just this season. And once you know it, still just an absolutely ridiculous ballpark where you're seeing doubles that play way up, triples play up. Home runs have played down, but over the course of the 3-year sample, I think that that's going to smooth out. It's sitting at basically league average, 199 there. I am very much here for the Boston Red Sox in these kind of hitting conditions against one of the big gas cans we have in baseball.
So for me, I have a team I'm getting way more exposure to than any other team in large field tournaments. It's the Seattle Mariners. Okay. So I understand why Kokonowitz ended up getting called up. It's the Angels. They don't have the best pitching staff. He's also been able to string together a couple of good starts in a row. So like, hey, he's 23 years old. Let's give him a look. His overall numbers in the minor leagues are abysmal, though. This year, 4.55 ERA, 3.67 FIP in the minor leagues, also isn't generating very many strikeouts. And you look at his numbers last year in AA, he had a 6.53 ERA and a 6.11 FIP. He's so cheap at 4K that, like, if he's just kind of serviceable, maybe gets lucky pitches to contact, you could see a scenario where he puts up like 12 fantasy points and he's decent for large field tournaments. But I really prefer to be on the Seattle Mariners side, because what I think is the most likely scenario is that he just gets lit on fire, because that's generally what's happened to him in the minor leagues. And not just this year, not just last year. You look at 2022 in A-ball, he had a 4.99 ERA and a 4.76 FIP. At 20 years old in A-ball, he made 20 appearances, had a 6.91 ERA, a 5.72 FIP. On the whole, this guy's struggled at every single level that he's ever pitched at in the minor leagues. And now he skips AAA, goes right up to the big leagues. And I think it's to get his ass kicked by the Mariners.
Well, then there you go. I like the Mariners. They're second for me in large field, but there's still one team that I'm playing in single entry and one team that I'm pretty positive is going to ruin my day. So go Oakland Athletics.
Okay, so talk to me on Oakland. Why are you getting to them in single entry? Not a contrarian team either, Oakland. There's going to be leverage there against Tanner Houck. Kind of surprised that Oakland is 6% owned in this spot. But Eric, is it the leverage you're liking about Tanner Houck, the weather, all of the above? What has you on Oakland?
Has more to do with the weather, and then also just some concerns over Tanner Houck's last couple of starts where things haven't been as smooth. He's been good at reducing barrels, sub 6% barrel percentage. But when you start getting north of that 42, 43% hard hit, you're also getting base runners starting to get going. 256 expected batting average here. He's always been good at, keeping the walks in check. I think the strikeouts are still going to be here against Oakland, but this game environment has just been ridiculous here the last couple of days. I know the Red Sox kind of made that a moot point yesterday by letting Cy Sears go berserk, but I am very much here for this game environment. 4 implied run total feels a little bit low for me looking at the books there. I'm probably going to end up betting the Oakland team total here closer to first pitch, but they're our top value stack by a ways. And I don't need a ton of value. I got Baz. I've got a lot of those guys, but I love getting to some Dodgers pieces against Aaron Nola, specifically Shohei Ohtani. I heard he's good at baseball. And this is like one of those rare spots where they're just not going to be popular whatsoever because of the quality of the pitcher there. But the game environment is also awesome there. Wind blowing out, really, really good spot. I like Schwarber, I like Harper, I like Turner, I like some of the expensive Phillies going up against Banda and then Landon Knack. But it is still a spot where you need to have some kind of savings to be able to get up to some of those guys. And I think Oakland stacks really do a good job of getting to like the 2-mans and the 3-mans that I really like to see in my lineups today.
So Oakland, that's what you're going to be going with
My
for
third
a single
highest
entry?
owned stack, which is ridiculous. And yes, they're going to be my single entry stack too.
It's tough because I don't have a good sense for how popular Seattle is going to be in single entry, because kind of the same thing at pitcher. The offenses are also kind of spread out ownership. Like, we've got teams, Seattle 11% owned, Houston 11% owned against Rodri Munoz. We got the Red Sox 13% owned against Luis Medina. Then the Phillies are 10% owned against Landon Knack. The Cubs are 9% owned against Albert Suarez. Even the Marlins and the A's, they're each picking up ownership. The least popular offense on the entire slate, it's the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they're still 3.5% owned. Even the Angels are 4% owned against Luis Castillo. So I'm not sure there's going to be one particular team that's crazy popular in single entry. Maybe it ends up being the Boston Red Sox, but I don't think people are going to like totally forego Houston or anything like that against Rodri Munoz. So I'm just going to lean on the team that I have the most confidence in as being a top stack, and I'm going to play Seattle in single entry.
Okay, that's fair. I would think that they're going to be really popular in single entry, but maybe not. Maybe not. Boston is going to no doubt be the most popular in single entry, and Houston without Yordan Alvarez does save you some money, but it also removes the best hitter in it, so that's kind of problematic against Rodri Munoz. But I can't say that I disagree that Seattle's like some bad stack. I mean, if we see Boston get nuclear ownership, like I think they probably will today. Yesterday, I was a little bit more trepidatious purely because Cincinnati existed. I think with Boston being kind of like clearing away, the implied total is like a run north of anything else. Funky Cole Medina sucks very much so. Yeah, we're probably going to see some depreciated ownership. I think for me, I'm just going to the really low owned spot here and getting the leverage against Tanner Houck. I think Tanner Houck is an awesome pitcher in real life, but for a small slate or a smaller slate, I think getting to some Oakland bats really, really makes some sense. Maybe I'll make them the 3-man and I'll go to like a 5 of the Dodgers here and see what happens.
I do have a question for you related to the Seattle Mariners as well. Slate locks in 20 minutes. It's a weird lock time. It locks at 6 p.m. Eastern time as opposed to the 7 p.m. Eastern time lock. I don't think we're going to get the Mariners lineup before we get to lock. This might just be confirmation bias because I already like them. I'm already playing them. I do think there's a chance their ownership comes down a little bit just because we aren't likely to have their lineup at lock, whereas we are going to have the lineup at lock for the other popular teams. We already have the Red Sox lineup. We already have the Astros lineup.
That's a good point. And one of the things that's nice about the Mariners is they have probably the most predictable lineup day in, day out. We see Mitch Haniger very, very rarely. We see Victor Robles. He's played once in the last 6 days. We have a pretty good idea that you're going to have Cal Raleigh DHing in this one. He's caught 3 straight days. And you definitely don't want Cal Raleigh out of the lineup before the All-Star break. So I think it's pretty easy to look at this lineup and say he's going to be DHing. You're going to get Mitch Garver catching, who's DH'd the last 3 days in a row. Because, again, you don't want him out of your lineup either. And you're getting Julio Rodriguez starting to ramp up. You're getting JP Crawford, who's led off for, I don't know, every game that he's played this entire season. And then Josh Rojas has just routinely been in there against righties, batting 8th. So there's not any concern I really have. Like Dylan Moore is still somebody that they're giving the leash to. He's probably going to be batting 9th there. He's the only one that I think there's any potential to potentially be missing, and having Victor Robles or Mitch Haniger show up in that lineup randomly. But like, it's a pretty easy guy to say, all right, I'll live with the number 9 hitter, maybe not getting as much of him, and kind of rotate other pieces there. Should be able to make the salaries work no matter what. So it's always annoying when you have Raleigh and Garver. Like, you want to play them together because they're in the stack. They're both probably going to be batting in the top 5 like they've been, but it's still a spot where you see some lower ownership just because people like to make their lineups early.
Yeah, and we've got in the lineup generator here, I think this more or less makes sense. We've got 3 teams that we're getting a good amount of exposure to. Red Sox, Astros, Mariners. Those are the three most popular offenses on the slate. Once again, though, nothing that's like crazy problematic. If I was building 3 lineups, I would build 1 stack of each of them.
Okay. That's fine.
They're overall, I think they are the offenses that are in the best spots today. Those are the teams we're getting the most of, and then just some other teams that have a little bit less ownership that are being mixed in there. So let's build some FanDuel lineups and see what pops up on the FanDuel side of things now, Jordan. And same deal. Let's try contrarian and see what that build ends up getting us to.
Let's do it.
And if you guys do want to sign up for the lineup generator package or any of the other packages at Stochastic, links down below in the YouTube description box. And like I was saying before, that promo code Greg, 25% off any package at Stochastic. Today is the final day that is going to expire later on today. So take advantage of it now, or just don't, I guess. So let's go and look at these lineups here, where we are once again getting to a lot of the Boston Red Sox: Devers, Yoshida, Duran, Tyler O'Neill, David Hernandez, some of our most rostered hitters, and then some Astros mixed in there as well. Jose Altuve, Yanier Diaz, Alex Bregman. Then we're seeing a Mariners bat there as well, and JP Crawford. Pitching really spread out, I assume, because our most rostered pitcher is Tanner Houck, and that's only 23% of him. So 23% Houck, 17% Castillo, 17% Nola, 12% Justin Steele, 12% Max Fried. This goes to show how spread out pitcher is today. And on a single pitcher site, I wouldn't want to have my lineups married to any one pitcher. I think you want to mix and match with some of those pitching options there. Stack exposures, I assume this now means a ton of Red Sox. Yeah, Red Sox, Astros, not as much Mariners showing up on the FanDuel side of things. Eric, are there any stacks that look different to you on FanDuel than what we just talked about on the DK side of things?
Not to a crazy extent. I will say Oakland, very, very easy to play, very, very cheap and easy to plug and play on FanDuel as well. But as far as something that looks different, I mean, Boston's still nuclear chalk. Seattle is still, pretty close behind. I would say you're just seeing more concentrated ownership on Boston, Seattle, Philadelphia. Looks like Houston's a team that is sitting 8.7% ownership share. And, if people are going to be getting to their value by way of like the 8-9 hitters from some of those other teams I just talked about there, I think looking at Houston, especially like the back half of the Houston lineup, I think Loperfido, he's going to be somebody who has speed, power going eventually in Major League Baseball. The speed's already there. Jake Myers, Trey Cabbage, they're not great, but like you can add them to the fold as well. John Singleton cleanup. I mean, this is just kind of a weird Houston lineup. It just always looks weird without Kyle Tucker and without Yordan Alvarez in it. But I would be fine getting to them a little bit more over on FanDuel relative to DK today.
Here's the team that I like the most over on FanDuel, and I like them a lot on DraftKings as well. I mentioned before, you and I were going to be talking at some point about how bad Rodri Munoz is. The Houston Astros, 8.7% owned as a stack on FanDuel. Instead, the Phillies are 14.6% owned. So you got the ownership higher on the Phillies on FanDuel, lower on the Houston Astros. I don't agree with that. It's still a good spot for the Phillies against Landon, but it is such a better spot for the Astros against Rodri Munoz. This guy's terrible. And he is one of many pitchers this year that has struggled in the minor leagues, gets called up to the big leagues, also struggles at the big leagues. And I just don't understand why this keeps happening this year. Like, I understand you don't want to call up your top prospects because you want to manipulate the service time. You want to push back until they're potentially going to be available in free agency. But I mean, Rodri Munoz, he had a 5.49 ERA and a 5.83 FIP in the minor leagues this year, gets called up to the big leagues, and he's getting his ass kicked here as well. He's a 5.48 ERA, 6.05 expected ERA, 7.46 FIP. Last year in AAA, 6.98 ERA, 6.31 FIP. The guy, every single level of the minor leagues, he's gotten his face absolutely kicked in. Now he gets called up to the big leagues. The same thing happens. I don't understand it. He throws hard. I guess he's got decent stuff from that standpoint, but he's not able to generate swing and miss. He's giving up a shit ton of home runs. Everything gets hit in the air against him. So modest ownership on the Houston Astros. That's my favorite FanDuel stack, Eric.
You didn't listen to anything I said, because I said literally everything that you just said.
I like the Houston Astros on DraftKings as well. But
I do too, but I like them more on FanDuel, and that was the whole point. I think we both came to the same conclusion.
For DraftKings purposes, once again, I'm just kind of even with the field on the Houston Astros. The stand I'm really taking it is going to be on the Seattle Mariners. That's making up the bulk
for me
of my stacks over there. Are there any other? I know you mentioned liking the Oakland A's. Any other teams that you're getting a good amount of exposure to that maybe you didn't expect to, or something that you hadn't anticipated?
Yeah, where are the Philadelphia Phillies going to come in ownership wise? Because they are very expensive over on DK. And I wouldn't be completely floored, shocked to see one of two things happen. Either Tanner Houck's ownership ends up a lot lower than 28%, and you're sitting on a really good pitching option, or the Philadelphia Philly stack comes in a lot lower owned than what we have projected. And I think as somebody who has a ton of Shane Baz in their lineups already, I think I'm going to give a little bit of a boost to Brandon Pfaadt so that I get myself to more of these Phillies. Because listen to these price tags: Kyle Schwarber 5,600, Trey Turner 6K, Bryce Harper 5,700, Alec Boehm 5,300, Bryson Stott 4,800, Castellanos 4,200, Brandon Marsh 4K. We're talking about 1 through 7. Nobody's less than 4K. Really, really hard 1 through 5 to make work. I think getting to like 3-mans, 4-mans, 5-mans of that team, of that top of the lineup, could end up being contrarian if we see Tanner Houck, Luis Castillo, Aaron Nola, Nestor Cortez pulling a ton of ownership. So I think getting to Shane Baz, I was talking about kind of like flip-flopping the ownership. I just have Shane Baz projected for more than it would seem just about anybody today. I think I'm going to try to get a little bit more Brandon Pfaadt. We've seen Atlanta be very, very terrible against righties this season for whatever reason, and they strike out a lot against them, 24.3%. I think Philadelphia is a team I'm also going to just try to boost a little bit to get a little bit more of, especially because of Baz's existence.
Yeah, so for me, the thing that surprised me the most until I looked at some of the pricing, I'm getting to a lot of the Marlins as a secondary stack and a lot of the
Okay.
players as one-offs. It's just a price point thing. They're going up against Jake Bloss, who, I mean, we've got almost no information on. He's pitched a total of 3 2/3 innings at the big leagues this year. And I mean, that's all he's ever pitched at the big leagues. And then also when he pitched in AAA this year, only threw 4 innings. In AA this year, he made 8 starts. And then you look at previous minor league information, we've got like nothing on Jake Bloss. The guy's a complete unknown. And then you got a team in the Miami Marlins who clearly not a great offense, but they are so cheap. Josh Chisholm is $4,500. The next most expensive hitter, it's Brian De La Cruz at $3,700. So there's so much salary savings here. You know, one of these guys goes out, gets an extra base hit, ends up scoring or something like that. And all of a sudden they're a really solid value play because they put up a handful of fantasy points. So, and what I don't think is the most difficult matchup, I like some of these Marlins bats for value. It's my favorite value stack of the day.
Don't hate it. Don't hate it at all.
Anything else that's important to you as far as stacks are concerned? If not, we will do our home run picks.
It feels weird not to have any Baltimore on this slate. Baltimore is just one of those teams that I feel like you could point to, circle, and say, they put up 12 runs against blank. And you could name just about anybody besides Paul Skeens right now, and you wouldn't be shocked that Baltimore got to them. They have a 4.6 applied total. Everything seems like we should be getting to Baltimore, and yet I'm not. I was just curious what you think about that, because there's just 1 through 6. I mean, I could make a case for getting to a lot of these dudes. I mean, Cedric Mullins ends up in the lineup. Gunnar Henderson has been worse against lefties, no doubt about it, especially from like a home run perspective, from a power perspective. But I feel like I should get myself to a little bit of Baltimore, because it would really be tilting to not have any Baltimore Orioles and then have them be the stack that puts up, 12 runs today.
They are so expensive. That's just the issue. It's the price
Yeah.
tags. If you want to roster the guys you actually care about, Adley is 5,500. Gunnar Henderson is 6,300. Anthony Santander is 4,800. Jordan Westberg is $4,900. It's hard to make stacks of them because of the price tags.
Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of where I do still prefer getting to the Phillies. If I'm going up to like an expensive stack, I like getting to the Dodgers too, man, of Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman. But it's not going to be like a full-fledged stack for me today, I don't think. How much Ohtani did I end up with? Because I know it's a lot. I have 32% Shohei Ohtani as a one-off today. And the next highest owned Dodger I have is 9% Freddie Freeman.
I have 19% of Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah. Love. Just give me the best hitter in baseball against a righty. That seems good.
Anything else to add about stacks, Eric? If not, we'll do our home run picks and we'll wrap it up for the day.
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
All right. If you guys haven't checked out Underdog, sign up using the link we have below. Get a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. And also head on over to Stokast. They take advantage of 100% totally free best ball projections. Also, Matt Kajeski, I don't know if they went up yet, but I know he started working on some best ball content this week. That's stuff that's going to be up on the YouTube channel in short order. Eric, who are you picking to go yard today? Who's the homer of the night?
I won't steal Julio Rodriguez from you. He's definitely a bet for me today, but I'm trying to think. I've now
He's my
gone
most
to
rostered player.
Oh,
Like
okay. So
pitcher, hitter, period, anything. Julio's the one I have the most exposure to.
okay, because I have 26% of him as well. I mean, I have a ton of him. Shohei Ohtani. Got a lot of these guys as like one-offs that are kind of being scattered across the board. Actually, Seattle, it's a lot of like two-mans with Mitch Garver or Cal Raleigh, basically playing a ton of those too, it would appear. I'm going to get off the board a little bit. I'm going to go to Zach Geloff here. So one of the things that Tanner Houck, I mean, he's been pretty darn good, but it's nearly like a 43.5% hard hit that he has. He does give up those 95 mile per hour plus hard hits. Now, they don't generally have a ton of loft on them to come along for the ride, and that can kind of be a problem. But looking at like mid-range options, guys that are just kind of like filler in some of my lineups, I think we're going to see righty power play better than lefty power based on what we've seen from Tanner Houck the last 2 years. 127 expected ISO against lefties, 150. Not like some crazy number by any means. Butler's sitting with a 206 expected ISO against righties, so that's kind of an interesting one to maybe take a look at as well. But Zach Geloff, 183 expected ISO, 12.5-degree launch angle. I'm looking through my lineups here. I'm trying to find like couples Oakland. It would appear he's in my top simulated ROI lineups across the board here. So I'll go off the board with Zach Geloff.
I got to go Julio. He's in so many of my lineups. I got him in 40% of them. So Julio Rodriguez, picking him to hit a home run today. That's going to be my guy. Jordan, you better think long and hard about your home run pick while I read off some of the ones from chat here. We're going to be starting with Brandon, who's going with Shohei Ohtani. Thomas Rensberger is Jose Altuve. Blake Moore is going with John Singleton for not one, but 2 homers. What, you get Jordan's out of the lineup and John Singleton absorbs all his power or something? Andy
like
Millman has got JJ Bleday. Sotex is going with Yandy Diaz. Jordan Klein has got Corbin Carroll. Malukar has got Bryce Harper. Our old pal Emac going with Matt Olson. Charles Moran has got Aaron Judge, but not off Shane Baz. He's saying Aaron Judge hits a homer off of a bullpen. Very specific call. I don't think we've ever seen this before, where somebody comes into chat and calls for a home run off a relief pitcher later in the game. I like it. I like the originality there, Charles. Andre B has got Isaac Paredes. We've got Casey Leatherwood giving out Luke Raley and Yanier Diaz. Then we've also got Reg Kell going Matt Olson for 2 homers. Barnaby O'Toole has got Corbin Carroll. Let's see. Jay Stinson has got Alec Boehm. Frauda Louis also got Alec Boehm. Then we got Will the Bill is going with Loperfido and Santander. Francisco Rubio is going with Mateo. And then Clips, another very specific call. He's going with Yandy Diaz for a leadoff homer. Jake Berger from Game On, Let's Go. And then Folk Matt bringing us home there with Gunnar Henderson as his home run pick. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm sure all of you guys have already done it already, but if you haven't, go ahead and do that for us. Other than that, guys, have a great night. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a good night.